Hi everyone, welcome to Chapter 8. Chapter 8 is going to be focusing on Gross Domestic Product, or GDP. You'll notice that GDP is looking at the measurement of how our economy measures how our economy is doing. When we look at GDP, we're going to be looking at the different fluctuations that occur. Our economy will go through what's called a business cycle, and it's these periods of economic expansion and recessions. An expansion period is a period of a business cycle during which production increases and unemployment will decrease. Whereas a recession is a period of the business cycle which production and employment will decrease. And the government tries to get involved to ensure that a recession is not as severe as it usually is. Economic growth is measuring the ability of an economy to produce an increasing amount of goods and services. And we measure this using GDP. Now, when we look at GDP, we're going to be looking at the market value of all final goods and services produced in a country during a specific time period, typically 1 year. GDP is measuring the market value of all final goods and services. So we're not going to be placing the components of intermediate goods in there. Market value is looking at the prices that they're being sold at. And when we look at final goods and services, they're going to trick you because a lot of questions will be related to the intermediate goods. For example, to produce wine, you need grapes. However, wine is the final good, grapes are the intermediate good. We don't calculate grapes as that's already in the price of the final good, wine. We're also looking at during a specific time period. During a specific time period is usually 1 year, and we measure our goods and services based on that 1 year time period. Let me go to the next component here. Now, GDP has 4 different components: consumption, investment, government, and net export. Here's the equation right here. Consumption is the largest component. Consumption is going to be divided into services and goods. And when we look at goods, we're going to have durable goods and non-durable goods. Investment is going to be looking at businesses, and it's not investing in the stock market. Investment is going to be looking at investing in factories, buildings, and our inventories level. G, which is government purchases, are looking at spending by federal, state, and local governments, such as teacher salaries, working on roads, machines, highways, aircraft carriers. It does not include transfer payments, which a lot of people get confused. And transfer payments are payments like Social Security checks or unemployment checks. Net exports is looking at the difference between exports minus imports. And you notice in the U.S. we have a very large trade deficit, which creates a challenge. So here's the components of GDP, and I think you'll be surprised about this. You notice the largest component right here is consumption. Consumers are the largest component of our economy. They make up about 70% of our economy. Businesses are 15%, government's 20%, and net exports is a negative 4%. And you notice the various things that we're going to spend our money on in the economy right here. But GDP is looking at consumption as the main driver of our economy. And we have to ensure that the main driver of our economy is very focused on adding value to our economy, because that's the key component. Now, what are some of the problems with GDP? One of the problems with GDP is it just reports numbers. It's not going to report if the economy's in terms of well-being, in terms of leisure time, in terms of crime rate. It's just going to report whether the economy is doing better or not. And it's only going to really produce what we're producing that we can measure. So those are some of the topics that we're looking at for this week, but I look forward to your effort in learning GDP.